Okay, everybody. So welcome to Recreation and Amenities. We sadly still have not got Andrew back with us, but I know we have spoken to him this evening, and he is with us. And I guess hopefully we'll be seeing him again soon. So I just need to do the formalities, which is the YouTube bit. And so this meeting is being recorded and will be uploaded to the Biddulph Town Council YouTube page. The aim is that decision-making should be transparent and in the public domain, which will involve more of our community in local democracy. By being in this council chamber, you are consenting to being recorded and for your image to be added to YouTube. The images and sound may be used for training purposes. Any views expressed are the speaker's own and do not necessarily reflect the view of Biddulph Town Council. Please view the guidance on recording in public meetings policy if you need information. Okay, thank you. So can we start with apologies?
Yes, in terms of members of this committee, apologies are Councillor Brady, Harper, Hart, Proudlove, and Councillor Hawley is the substitute member for Councillor Hart.
Okay, thank you. And the next item is the declarations of interest. Do we have any disclosable pecuniary interests, dispensations, or any other interests of any kind? I would have thought not. It's a very short agenda, isn't it, really? There's not much on there, but obviously while we're going and talking, if anything comes up, just say. The minutes of the last meeting on the 8th of October, we've just approved them at full council, so I'm assuming nobody's changed their mind since then. So is it? Item number 44. To consider a response in relation to, this is what you were talking about on Sunday. To consider a response in relation to a significant number of complaints of antisocial behaviour around dog walking, and I'm assuming that's not just what the dogs are doing, and that's part of the problem here, at the burial grounds, and the persistent removal and destruction of signage. Over to you, Chief Officer.
Thank you. This is an issue that we've discussed a number of times before, and the concern is always that good dogs are not a problem at the burial ground, but bad dogs, or rather bad owners, do cause a significant amount of distress to grave owners there. And as a result, there is signage up there that says no dog walking in this area. There are a number of people who walk straight past the signs with their dogs and continue to walk their dogs. We've had yet another complaint over the past week or so where a lady who is visiting a new grave observed another visitor to the burial ground who, while she was tending a grave, had let her dog off, and the dog was just pootling around the graves, having a little dig here and there, and getting all sorts of to all sorts of stuff. We're a bit at a loss to know what to do, to be honest. We put signage up, we put more permanent signage up, and in recent weeks that's been removed. Now, the only way to remove that is if you had taken your screwdriver to the burial ground with the purpose of removing that. So we're obviously up against somebody or a group of people who absolutely believe that they should be able to walk their dogs in the burial ground, and will, go to battle with us on that. In terms of the number of complaints that we get to the burial ground, we get very, very few, and those that we do receive are about people who are concerned about dog walking. In recent weeks as well, and if you've visited the burial ground certain times of the day or night, we have had an issue with rats, particularly at Woodhouse burial ground. Now, that might be because people feeding animals there. It's probably as a result of some bird feeders that have been hung in trees, which have now been removed, but we have had an issue with rats at the burial ground. So we're trying to deal with that. Therefore, there is then an issue if people let their dogs off leads, and we're trying to tackle a rat problem. So There are a number of issues there for you to consider, not least of which there are quite a number of people at the moment who are very, very sad because they just feel that the burial ground is not an acceptable place to walk dogs, whether good or bad owners or people. There are lots of lovely places in the town to walk your dogs. They very much feel like the burial ground is not the place for that. Sort of need some words of wisdom as to what next, really.
Councillor Jones.
Hey, Chair. I have to say, and I'm quite a regular visitor down there. I attend a couple of graves down there, one in the churchyard and actually two in the council burial ground. Are we talking about, Sarah, the new bit off Woodhouse Lane, or are we talking about the bit behind the old church burial ground?
Mostly, I think the kind of perpetrators, as they were, at the Woodhouse side. Less so on the older side, I think. You do see people with doing dog walking there, but in terms of kind of letting their dogs off, it mostly seems to happen at Woodhouse, where there obviously is more open space.
I was going to say I've never seen any problems in where my son is.
Yeah.
As regards the issues, I mean, I suppose there could be an argument for somebody that this dog was a particular favourite of the person in the grave, in which case, I suppose with a few years passing, that problem will go away anyway. Signage, yeah. I mean, as regards to signage, then tamper-proof screws. Let's just go down that route. Let's just be bloody minded back, and if they undo the screws, let's put some screws in that they can't undo. For now, I can't see any other issue really. As I say, I've never seen a problem. Never seen any dog poo in the other bit of the burial ground. I have to say, I very rarely go into the new part, so I can't really comment on that. But that's probably the answer as regards to signage, is to just make it can't be taken down.
As Chief Officer, is it dogs off lead that are the issue, not dogs on lead, or is it dogs full stop? Because then, like you mentioned on Sunday, then I'm thinking bylaws and even potential fines if people are actually breaking a very clear rule that's set. But I would suggest that the only rule that would likely be bylawable would be dogs must remain on leads, not no dogs at all.
I suppose it's all about the perceived behaviour of the dog on the lead, isn't it? If there is a dog on a lead and all they're doing is walking on the path, then there certainly would be an argument there that dog is not causing any harm. But I suppose it's how you enforce. Dogs can be on leads, but they must be on a path. They can't be on the graves. They must. It's all of the kind of the stipulations around that, isn't it? But there is and if we are trying to deal with rats in as humane a way as we possibly can, but that does involve some intervention, there is also there a risk to people letting their dogs just run all over the side.
Mr. Mayor.
Yes, thank you, Chair. There's two things here. I mean, it's one thing to have notice. I mean, just for my interest, because it probably predates me, is the notice backed up by an actual bylaw? And if it's backed up by a bylaw, what is the sanction which that bylaw professes to suggest? And who is responsible for enacting that sanction? I.e., if there is a dog warden at Stafford's Mills District Council and the bylaw says anybody who is walking a dog in this prohibited area is subject to a fine not exceeding £1,000, have they got fixed penalty notices which they can actually give out? I mean, and have they ever had a history of doing that? And that's on the dog thing. I mean, if it's a polite sign saying no dogs, please, then obviously that is unfortunately open to abuse. And obviously it has been open to abuse. So it's whether there is a sanctionable bylaw which is in place now that can be enforced. And the other thing about rats is that in some respects, rats are one of the creatures of the wild, so to speak. And, trying to do something to eradicate rats in an open field is always going to be a losing battle. It's one thing within somebody's attic or in somebody's cellar or in somebody's enclosed garden and things, but it's very difficult to systematically, individually go for a rat without affecting potentially other fauna in there, especially if if it's attracted to rats. I'm sure it's attracted to other things, so to speak. And the way of really resolving a rat issue in an open space is to take away the fast food convenience. And you've said that with people doing, sort of food put out for birds and whatever, with the best of intentions. But, society is paid with good intentions, which have got unintended consequences. And I think the thing is about, we shouldn't be encouraging bird feeders in an area where you don't want to effectively promote animals which you don't particularly want, whether they be squirrels in certain cases. You certainly wouldn't put bird feeders in a new plantation of beech trees, for example, because you get grey squirrels and you wouldn't get any beech trees. And the same must go with rats. I think you've got to have that prevention thing first, which is what you've said with taking them down. But again, some polite notices to say this is a consequence of good intention, the unintended consequence of good intention. Perhaps that's the way to go. But again, there's two parts to that query.
Are you ready? Yeah. So the answer is there is no bylaw.
Okay.
So that's an option to us if we feel we want to go down that, which of course would then be enforceable. That's not something we've done before, but I'm happy to look at that. That might provide some reassurance for those grove owners, grove managers at the moment who are really upset. If we are pursuing that as a potential option. The rat issue, I assume, has come from the bird feeders issue, which is no longer there. Obviously, it's not an open field anymore. There is a lot of activity that goes on in that particular vicinity. So, what to say, you're never more than a few feet away from a rat.
Get a raw deal.
And if once you've got one, they spread very quickly. Many more of them, aren't they? So, and the idea of there being rats at the burial ground is upsetting for people as well.
Yeah.
So that's something we need to manage quite sensitively, alongside making sure that, household pets are,
Councillor Jones, then Councillor Jackson.
Yeah, I'm just picking up on the points that Nigel made, really. Sorry, Councillor Yates made. It's a very delicate area, isn't it? That's the problem. You've got to be so sensitive. Don't say you can't feed the birds, and then somebody will say, well, my Auntie Maud loved to feed the birds, so we'd like to have a bird feeder on a grave. And what do you do in those instances? It's very, very, very difficult. I think, removing the feeders is there's a way to go with that. I'm pleased that there is some legislation to free dogs. I have to say, when the no dogs notice went up, I was a little bit disappointed because my dog's quite well behaved and he walks to heel and he doesn't need a lead. And we used to walk across to Matthew's grave and Alfie would sit there while we did the farming, but he has to stay in the car. And it's all right saying, rules are there to. I'm contradicting myself now. If there's a rule that there's no dogs, then there's no dogs. If we change that to dogs on leads, then let's have dogs on lead. But at the moment, it's no dogs. And I didn't like that when it first went up, but I can see the sense of it, and I think people need to abide by the rules. It's as simple as that. If we want to change it to something else, then that's fine. But I say, let's put the bylaw bit on the notice. No dogs, and it's, offences will be punishable by a fine not exceeding whatever it is, £1,000, whatever it is. I've no idea. I think that should go on the notice, and let's make the notices tamper-proof. That's for the rats. You just got to take the food source away.
Yeah.
It's even if you don't get it, because it's not just rats as well. I mean, people feed birds in the country park. They don't really need feeding. They're woodland birds, and all they're feeding is the squirrels, because the squirrels don't let the birds anywhere near it. And they put it on seats, and it all goes mushy, and I get really frustrated about that. But people are doing what they want to do, and they think is right, aren't they? So you can't sort of too draconian, particularly in a graveyard, a burial ground. So. Just got to be sensitive, haven't we? But I think just do what we can.
I just come back to the point of information.
I
have checked. It's something which I was aware of, but I did want to check it up, and I've just checked it up on a number of sources, and it's right. The risk of using rat poison effectively in an open field is that carrion birds, which include the majority of birds of prey, buzzards, sparrows, things like that. If they eat a poisoned rat, they're gone. So you are inadvertently running the risk of killing birds of prey.
I wouldn't advocate.
Who likes to see a bird of prey.
I wouldn't advocate killing the
It's
rats.
got to be prevention, not eradication in that respect.
I wouldn't advocate killing the rats at all, Chair. I think it's right. Somebody's just alluded to. I think if somebody once told me, if you see one rat, you've got 10.
Yeah. And what they do, and if you remove their food source from up above, they just go down below.
That's right.
Oh, yes, sorry.
But so the rat issue is, I mentioned that really just because of a management of the dog issue.
Yeah.
That's not really for discussion, the rat issue. We are managing that in a humane way. And absolutely, with specialists involved in that, and avoiding any kind of issues for other animals as well. So I feel, obviously we've got YouTube going on. I feel like it's just make that clear that we there isn't a risk necessarily to the dogs that currently visit the burial ground. We are.
Councillor Jackson.
It's a dilemma. For me to say no, but Jack Russell's are very good with the rats, aren't they?
Ratters.
Two good ones.
Perhaps the terminology we should be using, considering rat poisonous.
But I do spend a bit of time down there as well, and occasionally you'll see somebody walk through with a dog and then they're going somewhere else on the lead in the main. Occasionally you'll see one off the lead. But I have never seen one that's totally out of control, that's running around all over the place. The owners what I've seen, I'm not saying it doesn't go on, but what I've seen, most of the owners or all of the owners I've seen have either got the dog on the lead or the dog under some sort of control, and they don't let it go in, cocking a leg up against the gravestone, whatever. And I can understand people getting upset seeing something like that, and that's very understandable. So it is difficult. We've got a sign up there that says no dog walk. Now, we've got no teeth to sort of back that up at the moment, have we? Now, whether we do want to go down that, sorting a bylaw out or not, you sometimes think, it's sledgehammer to crack a nut sometimes, but and it's not, it's an awkward one, isn't it, really? Because you're going to upset people who probably walked down there since the graveyard was open with dogs or whatever. And I suppose there are people that might have died in there who had a very obedient dog and, take the dog down to see the grave.
Yes.
And you can understand them sort of sentiments as well. It's a really difficult one. And I don't know which way to go. I don't know whether we go down the route of banning dogs down there altogether. Which is basically where we are now, but without some sort of enforcement and policing, if you like, inverted commas, and actually, until somebody's probably prosecuted and you get some sort of headline, you won't get, people will still carry on doing it, I feel.
Thank you, Councillor. Mr. Deputy Mayor.
Thank you. Just a couple of points. One, a point made earlier on by Councillor Jones, I think has merit, whatever is said on the notice, that any further notices should be attached by tamper-proof bolts or whatever, first of all. The second is, and it's something that in the most recent debate has been mentioned umpteen times, this question of dogs on leads. Frankly, nowadays, a dog lead can be anything from a tightly controlled animal that you can pull it away from doing what's about to come natural to it, to a great extended length, which gives the dog such tremendous latitude anyway. So I think to use the term lead is a very vague and ineffectual term nowadays, I'm afraid.
I think that's a very good point.
Short lead.
Short lead, yeah. Yeah, but then how do you determine short? Councillor Rogers.
Thank you, Chair. I go down there the last couple of years, it's better than mother, but I've never seen a problem with a dog. I've seen people walking dogs. Personally, I've seen problems with dogs. And if you found dogs, what about dogs for the blind people, guide dogs, etc.?
I think there's an automatic dispensation.
What was that?
Yeah. if you say no dogs, is that automatic? So it's a bit of a thin grey area, isn't it, really? I think.
A grey area.
Guide dogs, no.
Just
From assistant,
no
assistance dogs.
no dog rules apply to assistant.
People have said, I'm walking my dog with that, it never caused a problem. I know there's outside of it as well, but in general, I haven't seen an issue, but I know people have complained of issues, but I personally haven't seen one.
We've got to Councillor Hawley.
I'm just sort of thinking, if we've got this sort of no dogs thing, and we talked about how do we impose it and everything. We've got a dog warden in Staffordshire Moorlands. If he's in Biddulph, then why can't he just nip in and have a look around? Because it just an ad hoc thing.
Word gets around.
I mean, but potentially and use it that way. Because then people are sort of going to say, well, we don't know whether he's going to turn up or we don't know if he isn't. And if he's there, if he's just going past, nip in. And if he's down in Biddulph, why not? This sort of thing, and make use of him in that respect. So you can actually impose the no dogs. I mean, I sort of think, don't like Councillor Jones. I mean, basically, I think dogs on leads was fine. I think the major problem is that you do get people who let the dogs run, and that potentially is where the problem lies. The bad owners, because the dogs that are out of control. Whereas I think most people, if you've got sort of something that said dogs on leads, would be quite happy to do it. And obviously, I think what Councillor Lawton says, yes or no, dog lead can be from here to wherever. They're that big now. But I think if they're on a reasonable sized lead, then potentially they should be okay. But as I say, it might be worth sort of saying, if the dog warden is in the area, just get him to nip in and have, so just have a quick look. And so people might be are aware that that could be happening. Yeah, that's just a thought anyway.
Councillor Kasiki.
The dog warden obviously have a field day if he was to issue tickets on Halls Road playing fields. I would imagine, judging by the complaints from footballers about dog mess left there.
So yeah, I mean, let's bring this together. So there's a general agreement that we want the sign back using tamper-proof bolts that would prove interesting. Would we like the chief officer then to also investigate the bylaw idea? Councillor Jones?
Just on, I mentioned earlier on about putting the bylaw details on the notice. I mean, I've reflected on it about what we've been talking. I don't think people that visit the burial ground want to be surrounded by officious notices. It can, it's not that type of place. It completely would ruin the ambience. So I think let's just put the no dog walking or no dogs, and just make sure they can't take them away. That's the first step. And as I say, remove the food source for the rats and see how we go from there. I don't think there's much more we can do, is there really? I think the dog warden idea is a good one, but they can't even stop. As the girl says, they can't stop them pooing on the playing field. So and that happens a lot. Isn't a big problem at the burial ground. There's only a few offenders down there. The chances of them catching anybody are somewhere between slim and none, I would have thought.
Okay, so we'll improve signage and make it as indestructible as we possibly can.
Well, make it unremovable.
And perhaps it's one to monitor, but I'll have a look at what it takes to set up a bylaw. Because then actually we know that that's the next step, isn't it? If we've still got very upset grave managers, then there'll need to be a more robust response.
Yeah. Okay.
Tricky.
The complaint has come from members of the public.
Yeah.
So have you got a number? Number of people who are on the complaint?
There are currently at least 5 on the Woodhouse side who are very sad and who are making contact with us on quite a regular basis.
Obviously upsetting men aside.
Yeah. Okay, thank you, everybody. Okay, item number 45. In advance of the budget setting to consider priorities for this committee for 25-26.
This is an item that we put on every November, so every committee gets the opportunity to think about projects that they might want to work on over the course of the next financial year. Obviously, there'll be some discussions about affordability going forward and whether they whether there are projects that are achievable within 2025, 26. But this is obviously the opportunity to raise those. For me, one of the things that we will need to do next year is to kind of test the market as regards the Lengthsman scheme. It's a little while since we did that. We historically haven't had much interest in people wanting to be the Lengthsman because of the very kind of ad hoc nature of the work. But we will need to go and test the market with regards to that. So that will be, I suppose it depends how much we allocate for a budget for that, but obviously that's something that is overseen by this committee. So we'll need to make sure that we've gone through a process there. Also, we've got, I'm pleased, I think, to tell you that we've got the planning permission through for the new Garden of Remembrance at Woodhouse. Albeit some of the conditions attached to that will require us to do a bit of work. So we'll need to have some conversations with the architect about how we fulfil those conditions. So that's a project that we've looked at for a while and previously had an earmarked reserve allocation for that project, as obviously we run the risk of running out of, interment of ashes spaces. That's a couple of things from me, I think.
Okay, thank you, Judy. Mr. Mayor.
Yes, I was just thinking, I mean, it'd help when, certainly me, because I sometimes have difficulty, I have to say, remembering what comes to recreation community, what comes to town and community and various other committees and things. So it would help me on this if there was a list of the routine things which are normally budgeted for by this committee, a list of thought of projects, and perfect example for that is the Garden of Remembrance, and also potentially an additional site, future site for the burial grounds or something was soon discussed. So there's a sort of, what is the routine list? What is the ongoing list which we're working on but hasn't been concluded by this financial year? And what is the forward list which we need to look at for this committee? And that will give us the start at 10 for us to sort of focus the mind on what bits are missing. And then the second thing is on the about that you're talking about putting the Lengthsman's job out to tender. Every time as a county councillor I have an issue with some overgrowth somewhere, there's a plethora of fully qualified people who would be interested in doing that job at a very competitive price on behalf of the county. The county doesn't unfortunately work like that, it has major contract. So I would request that any tender document which is put out in a way which we can put it on social media just to see if these people are legitimate and actually could make a contribution to the downscape, because perhaps it would then give us an extra skill set at a competitive price, and it also makes it a fair way of actually publicising that.
Can I come back?
Yes,
Come back on that,
Chief
please.
Officer.
Yeah, so every tender that we put out goes on the website and we advertise that on social media as well. So absolutely, we would be happy to accept any legitimate offers of support there. As regards the work, that's on our town council website. So you'll recall that we are responsible in this committee for allotments, footpaths, the burial ground. Historically, when there was discussions to be had over the Bemersley Waste Centre, they would come here. Any kind of 999 relationships, our open spaces obligations come here as well. So that's in regards to Springfield Road and the Butterfly Garden. And then if there's any transport or highway issues as well, they come here.
Can I say that, and Mr. Mayor's just made reference to it, but I mean, I'm very aware that we're now looking forward to 25, 26. And I know it comes up a lot, but we do not want to run out of burial space. And it does come up a lot, and we look for spaces and there is nothing, and nothing seems to change. And we're moving on to 25, 26. Another COVID or whatever it may be. I'm not trying to be macabre, but it's a fact. We need to really somehow find some way to what are we going to do down the line now to deal with the fact that we are seriously running out of burial plots in this town.
Well, I feel I ought to caveat that a little bit again,
Go on.
for the YouTube viewers.
Yeah.
We've probably got 20 years worth of burial spots, so you know, nobody needs to worry too much about that yet. But you are absolutely right. I mean, you know, what do they always say? They don't make more land.
No,
We are absolutely, you know, beholden to when people decide to sell their accessible fields, essentially within the town. So you know, we absolutely, if anybody gets wind of there being a field or an area of open space that may be up for sale, then that's absolutely something that we should be jumping on.
but we've got 20 years approximately left. Is that the theory is, give or take?
Depends a bit on that.
Okay. Councillor Rogers.
Yes.
Yeah, but it took best part of 20 years to find the one we've got.
Yeah, again, that's the point, isn't it?
Yes.
Councillor Kasiki.
Yeah, it would help if we knew what Lensman was actually doing and had a list of all the projects that he had completed. Also, if there's any money available, I'd like to see some of the overgrown and neglected areas, some money spent on tidying them up, because there are numerous eyesore areas, especially when you're approaching from Brindley Ford, all that area on the left, right-hand side before the Matador, below new buildings, has been overgrown for years. And if you contact the county council and ask if they can widen the footpath, because the footpath is very narrow because everywhere is overgrown, and all you get is we haven't got the money to do it. Same with the hedge along Halls Road. A local resident has cut the hedge, presumably, and obviously Nigel had raised this at the town council, but it wasn't the Lensman who'd cut the hedge, it was the local resident who'd done it.
Unfortunately, if I could just come in, Chair, unfortunately, borders are the responsibility of the landowner, not the responsibility of the local authority. The same as we don't cut residents' hedges, effectively, it's the same kind of thing. And you have cited areas where the royal family own a significant chunk of what you've just described. So if you've got the era of King Charles, then perhaps you can sort of ask him to look after his land on the outskirts of Biddulph.
I'm sure they wouldn't be short of a bob or two.
Well, I understand watching a recent documentary, he's got the odd £50 million swirling around doing nothing. So, and Halls Road is the responsibility of the landowner of the land behind, which has been an issue with Section 106 enforcement and whatever. So there are issues there. But generally speaking, there's unless it's a proper verge, not a bounded verge, and it tends not to be the responsibility of the local authority.
With immense apologies, councillor Jackson.
I was beginning to feel hurt. I think what we need to be thinking about on this is sort of stuff that is going to be costing the council going on and going on and going forward.
Ongoing costs.
Look at those sort of things very, very clearly. The Gardeners' Remembrance thing, really, it's spend a few £1,000s, but we're going to get money back from that. So that's not really an issue, so long as we've got the pot of money to spend in the first place, which we have. That's really not an issue, and I think that one should be really something that we should be looking at finishing this next year, because the other side is getting a little bit close to the knuckle, the memorials for interments in there. But I think we do need, and we're all guilty of this. We'll use the Lensman because it's a shortcut to actually getting something done, because the authority who is responsible for it takes forever to get it done. And we're all guilty of doing that. We do use the Lensman, and the Lensman does do stuff for us because somebody's in our ear, a constituent, and it's far easier because we've got far more control, which in a way is a good thing, I think, for us as councillors. But however, there's a cost to that. And we need to be sort of thinking that. So I think this, as a committee, we need to be looking at sort of the fees for next year, for the allotments, for instance, and really going through it with a fine-tooth comb to see where we can either save a bit of money or bring more money more money in. And I think, it does need, we do need to be sharpening the knives a little bit as well.
Those are all very, very valid points, councillor Jackson. Councillor Jones.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Well, I was, before councillor Jackson pulled it back in line, I was going to ask when did we move on to agenda item 46. I was looking at councillor, I think he seemed to be talking about. Yeah, the landsman, as councillor Jackson says, I agree with most of what he said. He is a very accessible and easily usable resource, and if you want a path cutting, sometimes it's quicker to just get him to do it.
Not sometimes, John, it's every time.
Well, every time, yeah, every time it pretty much is. Even though, we end up paying for stuff that we shouldn't be paying for, but, I think we certainly need to hang on to that, as much of that resource as we can. We've obviously got all the costs, so it's, when's the tender actually gonna be out, sir? Is it next year?
Yeah, we won't look at that till probably.
Another 12 months.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Oh, and if I may, sorry, Chair,
Yes, of course.
we'll design that tender here.
Yeah.
Obviously in a confidential session so that we can kind of bounce those ideas around, but at that point, we'll bring to you an analysis of what work has been completed. And what, what the regular items are, what the ad hoc items are, and then we'll essentially design what we call that.
We get his invoice list, don't we, on accounts payable, don't we? We know what he's doing.
Would
Yeah,
it
we
be
know what
possible to break that down to say, well, what work he's done under what you would term what should be the lensman versus how much it's cost us for work to him that should actually have been done by another authority?
Yeah.
Maybe would
Yeah.
that I'd find that incredibly useful.
I can have a look at that. I do filter the stuff that we ask him to do because of that reason, because otherwise we would be cutting county highways day in, day out. So there's quite a bit of stuff that gets talked about here, which potentially would blow our budget in one go.
Yeah.
Bear in mind, we do have a very small budget for the Lensman comparative to to other budgets and the work that actually gets done. So, it's easy enough to break it down in terms of, and we can probably do it on a ward basis as well, regards to, the areas that he cuts as a regular, and the ad hoc stuff that he does as well. We can probably break that down.
I think, Chair, it's very rare they're a rare beast, I think, the type of guys that will do that type of work, because it's so desperate. I mean, it's everything from cutting edges, trimming to, can you just move those barriers up there for the car show and do this, all that sort of stuff. It's basically, any bits of jobs you want doing, pretty much.
It's like an old-fashioned handyman, which
Pretty much. And it's difficult to put a tender together. It's the first thing to describe what you want. And then when you get them, they'll, some contractors, once they've won it, were so hard. I'm not doing that. I didn't say I'd do that. To get the guy, a guy like the one we've got, and I'm not saying he's the only one, because the one we had before was just the same. They are a rare beast and difficult to find. So, anyway,
Mr. Mayor.
Yeah, and just to clarify, I mean, for the purposes of those who are watching on YouTube, I mean, when it comes to, as Councillor Kasicki says, an overgrown hedge or an overgrown bush or an overgrown bit of pavement or whatever, there's an assumption that it's the council's responsibility.
Yeah.
Which is not considered to start off with. There's the three councils. Now, one of them has very, very little responsibility because it owns very little land, or forecourts or whatever, and that's the town council. But Staffordshire Moorlands is quite defined. County council is a little bit more ambiguous defined. Adding to the mix, the social housing providers who have got plenty of, and it's a word which has been thrashed around this last 12 months, plenty of ginnels, never mind footpaths and whatever, which were part of a whole estate transfer, which they don't know they own until they're challenged. And then also in consideration of that, the amount of land which is actually unregistered and you can't find an owner. And they tend to be the ones, and I'm thinking the one on the outskirts of Craigside, which was an absolute nightmare to try and find somebody to put. Eventually it was cut, and I'm still scratching my head who actually did it in the end. Anyway.
Right, thank you. Yeah, I think we I think we deviated the lensman. I mean, considering he's the next point as well, he's dominated this conversation. So, but basically, we're going to be, it's going to be going out to tender
So
next
the thing
year.
for me, I
There you
think
go.
there are some priorities for next year. So we've talked about Lensman tender, we've talked about
Yeah.
Woodhouse Ferry, Grand Garden of Remembrance. Always on the list of things to do is to keep our eyes open for a new piece of land.
Correct.
We'll need to make some decisions as regards the butterfly garden. That would fall within this remit here.
I think councillor Jackson's comment about the fine tooth comb, looking at, you know, at the income generation opportunities.
You know, apart from, well, I was going to say, apart from the health and the safety risks, at Butterfly Garden, you know, we've talked before about actually limiting the amount that we spend on that. You know, we are obliged to tackle the Japanese knotweed. We are obliged to make sure that the trees within that area don't overhang the highway. Those sorts of activities we'll have to keep doing, but in terms of the kind of development there, for me, unless you say otherwise, I don't think we need to allocate necessarily a budget for development of the butterfly garden.
I think there's a lesson, isn't there, here for the council as a whole of things being started with all good intention by outside groups that end up on
Burden.
us and the council. You know, Christmas lights, that was an initiative by the Chamber of Trade, and it's costed us an arm and a leg now. It's costing us, I say us, the town council and the taxpayers who actually pay into this. The butterfly garden, there's been money spent on that in the recent years, and it was something that we didn't ask for, didn't want particularly, but it's been landed here. And I think there's, you know, the bus hub, another one perhaps, cost you an arm and a leg. And like I say, when I was on the executive, that just appeared. Didn't see where it had actually come from. Nobody had asked for it or anything. It just appeared, and that is costing now the town council, you know, a lot of money that we should be looking at saving one way or another. So there's a lot to go on, and we've got to get through quite a lot of stuff before we send the precept to the district council. So obviously, it's good. It's on the agenda here, but behind that, I think is quite a considerable amount of more work that needs looking into.
Councillor Jones?
Yeah, I don't want to extend this discussion unduly. I just really mentioned the butterfly garden. We did say we were going to shut the gate, didn't we? Let's shut the gate, see if anybody complains, and if they didn't complain, leave it shut and make it safe. Did we do that?
I think we said we'd discuss that going forward. We sort of ummed and ahed about it, talked about requirements as regards tree management and all the rest of it, water management. So, I think that's one to talk about. We've got to have some tree work done in the next few weeks, which is not an insignificant amount.
Because I suspect it isn't particularly well used, if at all. I think that's probably the approach to do it, is to just close it, see if anybody complains, and if nobody does complain, let's just make it safe and be done with it.
Yeah. I think
They go back to the wild, you know, it's by university that is, and it's always right.
We probably do need, I think we need a wider debate about this, because I'm not 100% sure how people like United Utilities will access that water course. So then if we start shutting the gate, we might be limiting their access to that. So there's just a few things to unpick there.
Lock on that they've got the key, do you know?
Yeah, that's it. There's just a few things to unpick there as regards who does need access. We'll do that another time.
Councillor Rogers?
Just 10 seconds, I've always said, I think people who use the butterfly garden, if any, people come really forward, which isn't on us.
Okay. Oh, councillor Kasich,
Just quick one, presumably the hedge will be maintained still by the town council.
I think it should be. That's the sort of thing I think we need to debate, because actually, you know, and I guess that's historically the reason why we ended up with the butterfly garden. I wasn't here at the time, but it's that first thing that you see when you come into Biddulph.
Yeah.
So it's some maintenance of that in order to make it look as though we, you know.
Time the edges up, don't
Yeah.
Okay, well, that brings us to the gentleman who has been mentioned a great deal.
Yeah.
Jobs for that aforementioned Lensman. Councillor Jones.
Not strictly a job for the lensman, but as you are sure all aware, the defibrillators in Biddulph have been taken over by a company called AED Donate. And they're doing a really good job. I mean, they're replacing a lot of the boxes, you know, the outdoor boxes, because they get a bit long in the tooth and a bit shabby, and some are letting a bit of water in. And they're doing that all at no extra cost. They're doing that as part of the contract that they signed with SMDC, which is good news. Sadly, we've got a particular problem with the box up at the telephone box up at Biddulph Park. It's an absolute mess, and AD Donate are a bit disappointed when they saw it, to be honest. The one on Biddulph Moor Village Green is fantastic. It's immaculate. The one at Crowber, we've got three. One at Crowber Road is okay. The one at Biddulph Park's in a really bad state. Now, I know the Lensman, it isn't Lensman work, it's painting. It's a painting job. So I just wanted to get it on the books really, and see if we couldn't get somebody to just pressure wash it and give it a coat of paint at some point. And Sarah, I have discussed it with Sarah. I think I'd like that just moving forward. It's a shame. It's a shame actually that, and if any of them are watching here tonight, I'm not having a go, but it's a shame that the people that there's about half a dozen houses there. You know, if I lived there, let's go and sweep it out now and again, and nobody seems to bother them. It's just an overgrown. It's a mess. So I'd like to do, because this is our box. We own the box. It'd be nice to just tidy it up a bit. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor?
Just while you mentioned that, I know it's trickling up and hard to do the agenda, but I suppose it could go down. The defibrillator box at Biddulph Grange Country Park, the actual reference number has been scrubbed off. So if you phoned up to say what, you know, and it says, tell us what the location number is and we'll give you the code, you can't actually read the location number. I don't know if you've got that and whether somebody can get it down and.
They don't need the location number.
Okay.
Need the
I
location.
mean, that's what the instruction said, but I would accept that it'd be.
It also says for anything other than 999, ring my mobile number, and that's no longer valid. That's no longer valid, people. But if you ring me, I'll pass it on.
Any more jobs for the lengthsman? Councillor Kosicki?
Yeah, the lay-by at Whitemore is very overgrown.
Yeah,
It needs trimming. Some fly tipping there, like wood cuttings, that's had reported.
Someone was just to council development with that.
Yeah, so I don't know whether they have actually cleared it yet.
Usually pretty good.
Yeah, but it's very overgrown. And obviously I'd like to nominate Tunstall Road below new buildings, which has been overgrown for many years. It's not a recent occurrence, but the footpath on Tunstall Road below new buildings is very narrow because of all the overhanging bushes and trees. Some of it belongs to the residents of new buildings, but it's on the Matador side. It's down from the former Mill Hayes garage, the soap place, down to the Matador. It's mainly on that one side. It's very overgrown.
Is that, are we done? Jobs for the lengthsman? Winter is upon us. So confidential items. So everybody on YouTube, the huge throng out there watching this meeting. Farewell and have a lovely evening. So confidential